So, hi everyone, and it's after lunch, so thank you for taking the effort to come to this talk. And hello as well to all the people connected via live stream. It's a pleasure that you are listening. And for those who still don't know me, I think all of you by now know me. I am Vittorio, I'm MySQL pre-sales. And as someone before the presentation here commended, my job is normally to talk to people about other people's work. So here we are today. We are talking about MySQL REST Service, and this is the first of 3 talks for this afternoon, because there will be other 2 talks which will be a bit more technically deep than mine. In case you will have questions anyway, I'll rewrite the questions to Miguel and Mike in the room, so we're all covered. So the topic of today, it is something I wanted to present for a very long time, since it is, you see, how MySQL REST Service ends the middleware tags. So the objective of the presentation is to give all of you a very good reason to start looking seriously at MySQL REST Service as a whole, because in case you're asking yourself, what for do I need REST APIs on a database? Well, I hope to give you a convincing answer in the next 30 minutes. So we will, before understanding how MySQL REST Service ends the middleware tags, we will understand what is the middleware tags, or better to say, middleware dependency. And we'll see then MySQL REST Service joining the party, and how, if we want to eliminate that so-called tags, what are the key functionalities which help us do this and what they help us accomplish. And getting started. So everything in life starts with a story, and this presentation starts with a story which originates much before MySQL REST Service. It's a story that starts about 30 years ago, and it is the digital transformation story. So once upon a time, in a time covered by the fogs of our memories, but I think we all remember this, there was a world which was ruled by an entity called the monolith. So the monolith was ruling the world in kind of an absolutistic way, because me at university, as I think the majority of us, we were taught to worship the monolith, that the monolith is the end of our problems. And in reality, the monolith was controlled by a guy called the Silo Man. So the world was living in this kind of structure where all the data were flowing to a single monolithic application body, which was kind of terrifying, but back then none of us saw that. When we started seeing that, a hero arose, the API man, which broke the monolith and set the data it contained in the monolith finally free, right? So what happens then? After a revolution, it comes the peace. So the digital transformation brought peace in the world, and the APIs were happily floating around, and the world was happy, everything is green. So that's perfect, no? No, because in every story there is a turning point, because the Silo Man was actually conspiring to take his revenge. And the revenge took the form of the middleware. So the middleware chained all the APIs to itself and originated something known as the middleware tags. So what's next? All right, the story is beautiful. I like to see it this way, but let's see what happens here, what happened in reality, right? And the reality is less colorful, less comicsy. So the reality is that at a certain point the world changed and monolithic applications were good until a certain time when the data were contained in a perimeter which was mainly identifiable as the perimeter of a given company, but mobile revolution, technological evolution, new development trends, applications mostly changed the world, so we need to open up, and the best way to open up was leveraging the API. So application architecture changed from this to this, where we do have a front, as we all know, a front end, a middleware where REST APIs are processed, and MySQL. So, why the middleware, which was supposed to be a solution, with the time started to be a problem on its own? Because of several reasons. So, there are a set of dependencies tied to the middleware, not as a technology, not only as a technology overall, but as specific middlewares, because then everyone started to sell its own middlewares and so on. So today we find out that very often we are writing the same CRUD for every new database table that gets created, because at the end of the day the data are still on the database, and the task of APIs was to leverage this. And we are writing the same CRUD operations for nearly every data. Latency, again, because every call has to traverse a load balancer, out service, API logic, the ORM, so the object relation mapping, and the database driver. Then we have also synchronization problems, because we need to keep our backend models, front-end and database, everything in sync. And last but not least, maintenance. So, where does MySQL REST Service fits into this? Does it eliminate the need of using a middleware? Maybe, if you want to go the hardcore way, or maybe it will allow the database to speak to any middleware without having to, if we change technology, without having to rewrite the same queries, the same translation from queries to REST APIs over and over again. So here it comes. The MySQL REST service is a next generation JSON document store solution, which enables to have endpoints directly accessible from the database, and it comes with several, made of several building blocks. So the MySQL REST service, which is available either via MySQL router or via a component on its own. Wait for the next talk to know more about that. Then there is a client SDK, and the beautiful thing is that it allows us, and we'll see in a few slides, to have an immediate mapping to the data with auto-generate documentation. So it potentially allows us to have easier integration point in our infrastructure ecosystem, not having to rewrite the same CRUD modules over and over again whenever either we change middleware or when we attach to multiple solutions. And this is the architecture. So we have the front. If we want to go the hardcore way, we can have the front end, which directly speaks to the MySQL REST service, which is directly attached to the database. So we skip potentially one step. Am I saying that you should get rid of your costly middleware, which is probably used for all sort of other things? Probably not, but it can simplify the access because you do not have to talk anymore to a middleware in REST language, which will then get translated into SQL. It will be REST all over the way up until the database. So you have much more control over what goes out of the database. And this is an example of the architecture. We can use the MySQL router. Very soon we will be able to talk directly to the database without the intermediation of MySQL router. Wait for Miguel's presentation to know about that. And let's see what are the functionalities which help us to mild or potentially eliminate the middleware dependency. Direct data mapping. This is my favorite functionality at all. Via the MySQL shell for Visual Studio Code, you can, with the graphical interface, choose which tables and columns you want to expose. You can choose the authentication, and so you can expose tables and store procedures, which is also key in case we want to have some execution logic, not anymore on the middleware, because with store procedures we can call triggers and so on. So we can have the execution logic of our APIs directly tied to the database, which will be quicker, because I know by myself when in our API gateway, for example, the API logic starts to be bulky, it can have slowdowns, while SQL codes runs still much quicker. And then we can have one-click open API documentation. We'll literally right-click on our REST service. We click and we select Create Documentation. We got a web page in OpenAPI format powered via Swagger, and we can give out to our developers to test APIs straight away and immediately. So if some of you are familiar with API management solution, this is the equivalent of an API portal, auto-generated. So honestly, before joining Oracle, I was selling API management solutions. I have no words to describe how beautiful this is and how helpful this can be. And then there is built-in security. We have actually integrated authentication. We have auth, so Google, Facebook, OCI auth. We have local MySQL REST Service accounts, so we can create a set of accounts for our MySQL REST Service, and we have even native MySQL account. Now, to keep security standards higher, I would not personally recommend to use native MySQL accounts out of a development environment. So you do want to play with NRS authentication, which provides salted authentication. So if it can be worked via the application to get the author to generate an authentication token. And we get row-level security, so we can combine all of this with the MySQL privilege scheme and with the possibility of exposing what we want to show this column rather than that column. So we do not need to give access to an entire table as it was done before, or even to an entire instance as it was done before out of laziness. we can granularly configure what we're going to show. And absolutely last but not least, performance and scaling features. So there is integrated in-memory caching for the responses, which are kept in memory for frequent requests, native JSON. So when I presented this at one of the Oracle user groups, I got the question, are you thinking about a documental model as well? So apart from the fact that the person who asked the question entirely skipped the MySQL document store, which happened several years ago, well, this is it. REST APIs allow to retrieve JSON natively given out from the database. The responses can be even paged, so we can have pagination options. And this is it. It's a documental solution, so in case we want to do documental development, or NoSQL development, here we go. We retrieve the JSON and then we do whatever operation we need to do. Again, for more complex operation, I would suggest exposing store procedures, not really embedding heavy logic in the application, but this is my personal taste. Then, built-in horizontal scalability, more routers, more REST, more capability for digestion of more traffic, more REST calls available, easy. The router is a stateless component which you can deploy in multiples, you can cluster it, you can do nearly whatever you want with it. Optimized data retrieval, as I said, native support for server-side filtering, sorting, automatic paging to minimize the network overhead, so not to have too big chunks of data to go through the network. And resource protection, so integrated throttling and rate limiting to maintain the stability of our traffic during the execution. So
is that done in the router or is that done in the server?
Sorry?
Is that done in the router or the server?
In the router.
The router.
Yeah. So if you like this, then you might want to combine the REST APIs with a bonus functionality, which is currently enterprise only, but as it was discussed in the previous days, who knows? JavaScript store programs. Because you can expose store programs, so if you can do that, why not build JavaScript logic in store procedures and leverage JavaScript libraries and so on. So the server will execute JavaScript code and it will give the result in native JSON via REST endpoints. So this is a simple use case for REST APIs. What was before? Before you could have either the client talking to the database or the usual application stack talking to MySQL, or API gateways, microservices, and then talking to MySQL. So the objective of the REST API is, apart from who wants to use it to replace all of what was that before, or to start from scratch, because if I would be starting a startup today with an intelligent idea about an application, which unfortunately I don't have, what I would do today to start off would be MySQL with REST service and GenAI to code for me. But I don't have any idea which is intelligent enough or the opposite. So in reality, if you already have an infrastructure, you will want to use REST APIs to complete all of that and to have your database speak an easier language for all the other components to understand. So I actually went really quick, so summing up,
We have a lot of time.
yeah, we do have a lot of time for questions and discussion, but summing up, we do have a modern application architecture proposed by MySQL where the REST APIs rather than JavaScript are playing a key role in building your next MySQL applications or refactoring existing applications, because again, coming back to the beginning, the original idea of the digital transformation was, rather than reinventing the word, was rather making the word more beautiful, more appealing, more open, more compatible. So this is the kind of idea that MySQL REST Service, in my opinion, serves to. Like to make MySQL a better and smoother part of the whole. And summing up, you can make the REST APIs will allow you to make MySQL independent from a specific middleware and will allow you to not having to reinvent the wheel every time you change technology. It will be quicker to develop because you'll be speaking native REST language to the database. It takes good care of security, as usually MySQL is doing. And when with fewer moving parts, at some point you'll realize you'll end up saving on time, cost. So you will end up reducing the dependency from the specific technology. So this will bring some savings when you look at the general picture. So I hope I have given you enough of a reason to start looking into MySQL REST service for the next coding task you'll have to do. And if there are questions, I'm here.